Jack Miller had always been a man of few words. His garage was a reflection of his life. Simple, no frills, and yet filled with a kind of quiet purpose that spoke volumes. It was a place where machines came to life, where broken cars and old parts were transformed into functional works of art. Jack's reputation in the small town was built not just on his mechanical expertise, but on the unwavering kindness that seemed to radiate from him. The shop was tucked away at the end of a narrow street, its old sign swaying in the wind, bearing the name Miller's Auto Repair. Most days, the only sounds to be heard were the clatter of tools, the hum of an engine being tuned, or the occasional burst of laughter that came when Jack found humor in the simplest of things. He wasn't a man who sought attention. His satisfaction came from solving problems, from breathing life back into machines that others had given up on. People in town often joked that Jack had a gift, a way of making cars feel like they had a soul. But despite his expertise, Jack wasn't the kind of man to brag about his accomplishments. He found joy in the small acts of kindness, fixing a neighbor's flat tire for free, helping an elderly couple jumpstart their car, or giving a young driver their first lesson in the art of maintaining a vehicle. Jack's heart was just as dependable as the engines he worked on, and that's why, on this particular afternoon, he found himself about to embark on a journey that would change his life and the lives of others in ways he never could have imagined. It was an overcast Tuesday when Emily Harris and her mother, Lucy, walked into Jack's garage. Emily was no stranger to Jack. He had seen her around town on several occasions, often with her mother, always in her wheelchair. Emily had been paralyzed from the waist down after a tragic accident when she was just 5 years old. Since then, her life had been filled with challenges, long therapy sessions, the endless frustrations of being limited in ways that most children couldn't understand, and a family that had grown accustomed to the idea that Emily would always need assistance. But on this day, there was something different about the way Emily looked at the world. Her bright blue eyes were filled with a fire that Jack hadn't seen in her before. It was a mixture of curiosity and determination. As she rolled into the garage, her gaze immediately locked onto the cars Jack was working on. There was no hesitation in her movements. It was as if she had always belonged there, in the midst of the grease and metal. "Hello, Emily," Jack greeted her with a warm smile, wiping his hands on a rag as he approached. "How's it going today?" Emily's face lit up as she smiled back at him. "Hi, Jack. I was just looking at your cars. They're so cool. I always wonder what it would be like to drive one. It must feel so amazing." Jack chuckled softly, crouching down to her level. "Well, there's nothing quite like it. The wind in your hair, the hum of the engine. It's freedom. But I guess that's a bit harder when you're in a wheelchair. Huh?" Emily's smile faltered for just a moment, her gaze dropping to her lap. Jack felt a pang in his chest. He could see the quiet sadness in her eyes, the resignation that came with knowing that her dream of driving a car was something that seemed out of reach, something that belonged to others, not her. Lucy, standing behind her daughter, gave Jack a weary but appreciative smile. "She's always loved cars. I've heard her talk about wanting to drive since she was little, but we've always been told that it's just not possible." Jack's heart ached at the words. He had seen Emily grow up in the town, had heard about the accident that had changed her life forever. The doctors had said she would never walk again, and despite years of physical therapy, that prognosis had remained unchanged. But what hurt the most was not the fact that Emily had been confined to a wheelchair. It was the fact that she had grown up believing that her dreams were no longer within her reach. Jack stood silent for a moment, his mind racing. He had spent his life working with machines, breathing life into metal and steel. He had fixed engines, rebuilt transmissions, and even built custom cars from scratch. But what if he could do something more? What if he could do for Emily what no doctor or therapist had been able to do? Give her a sense of freedom that she hadn't known in years. "Emily," Jack said slowly, his voice soft but filled with a quiet resolve. "What if I told you that I could build something for you? something that could help you feel what it's like to be behind the wheel. Emily looked up at him, her expression confused. "You mean, you can build me a car?" she asked, her voice tentative, unsure if this was just another well-meaning but impossible promise. Jack nodded, his smile growing wider. "Not just any car, Emily. A car that's made just for you. Something that'll give you the freedom to drive, to feel the wind in your hair, to control your own path, just like any other kid." The room went silent. Lucy stared at Jack, her eyes narrowing with skepticism. "Jack, I don't want to get our hopes up. You don't have to do this. We understand that it's just not possible for Emily to drive a car like other kids." But Jack's eyes were steady. "Sometimes things seem impossible because no one's tried to make them possible. I'm not saying it'll be easy, but I believe it can be done." For a long moment, no one spoke. The only sound in the garage was the faint ticking of a cooling engine. Emily's gaze drifted back to the cars parked in the garage. There was a flicker of hope in her eyes, something she hadn't felt in a long time. "Okay," she whispered. "I believe you." Lucy's voice was shaky as she asked, "But how? How can we afford something like that?" Jack's smile softened, his resolve firming up. "You don't have to worry about that. This is on me. I'll figure out how to make it happen. For you, Emily. For your dream." And with that, Jack made a promise. It wasn't just a promise to build a car. It was a promise to show Emily that her dreams weren't out of reach, that her life didn't have to be defined by her wheelchair, that with a little help, anything was possible. Over the next few weeks, Jack threw himself into the project. He spent countless hours in his garage, sketching designs, salvaging parts, and building from scratch. Each piece of the car was crafted with care, but more than that, it was crafted with heart. Every wire, every bolt, every curve was made with the intention of giving Emily the chance to feel what it was like to drive, what it was like to be free. And as Jack worked tirelessly on the car, he never once considered what might happen next. He had no idea that this simple act of kindness, this desire to give one little girl the gift of independence, would soon attract attention that would change his life forever. But as the car began to take shape, something extraordinary was about to unfold, something Jack could never have predicted. And it would start with the arrival of a sleek, black limousine parked outside his humble garage. The weeks that followed were filled with an intensity Jack had never experienced before. He had always been passionate about his work, but this was different. This wasn't just another car repair or custom build. It was a mission, a promise made to a little girl who had only ever dreamed of feeling the rush of freedom that a car could bring. As Jack spent long days and nights in his garage, working on what he had come to think of as Emily's car, something inside him shifted. He wasn't just creating a vehicle anymore. He was creating hope. The design itself had started as a simple concept, something small enough to fit Emily's needs, but powerful enough to give her the thrill she had always wanted. Jack had never designed a car for someone with such specific needs before, and as he worked, he realized just how much his own skills were being tested. Every piece he put together had to be tailored to Emily's unique situation. He used lightweight materials to ensure the car was easy for her to maneuver, designed a set of hand controls that would allow her to drive independently, and even made sure the seats were comfortable, providing the support she needed. But it wasn't just about the mechanics of the car. It was about making her feel like she was part of something bigger, part of the world outside her wheelchair. At times, Jack felt overwhelmed by the enormity of the task. There were moments when he doubted himself, when he wondered if he was in over his head. But every time those thoughts crept in, he would picture Emily's face, the hope that sparkled in her eyes when she first asked about the possibility of driving. And with that, he pushed forward. There were no shortcuts, no compromises. Every part of the car had to be perfect. And Jack wasn't going to let anything stand in the way of fulfilling that promise. The nights were the hardest. The small garage was cold and quiet, the only sounds being the hum of his tools and the occasional distant sound of the town's nighttime routine. Sometimes, Jack would find himself staring at the car, wondering if it would truly work. But then he would remember the look on Emily's face when she had told him she believed in him, and he would dive back into his work with renewed determination. During this time, Jack's relationship with Emily and her family had deepened. Emily's mother, Lucy, would often stop by with a warm cup of coffee or a snack for Jack. She had been skeptical at first, unsure if such a project was even possible, but as the weeks went by, she began to see the transformation in Jack's work. It wasn't just about building a car anymore. It was about changing a life. And slowly, she began to believe too. On a rainy Wednesday afternoon, as Jack was tightening the final bolts on the car, he heard a car pull up outside. It was a sound he had grown used to, the sound of the world continuing on outside his little bubble of progress. But something about this sound made him stop. It was different from the usual rattle of an old truck or the hum of a commuter's car. This was smooth, sleek, and unmistakably expensive. A limousine. Jack wiped his hands on his grease-stained apron and stood frozen for a moment. Who could that be? He wasn't expecting anyone, certainly not anyone with a vehicle that polished. He squinted through the grime on the garage window, trying to catch a glimpse of whoever had arrived. His mind raced, wondering if someone had heard about his work on Emily's car. But no one in town, as far as Jack knew, had that kind of vehicle. The Limo slowly came to a stop outside the garage, the engine purring as it idled. Jack's heart beat a little faster in his chest. He wasn't used to surprises, especially not surprises like this. Slowly, the passenger door of the limo opened, and out stepped a man in a well-tailored suit. He was tall, with dark sunglasses and an air of authority that immediately made Jack feel like he was out of his league. The man approached Jack's garage, his steps measured and deliberate. Jack wiped his hands once more on his apron, his nerves getting the better of him. Was this some kind of mistake? Had someone come to see him about the car? He hadn't expected anything like this. "Mr. Miller?" the man asked, his voice smooth, but carrying an undertone of urgency. "That's me," Jack replied, his voice steady despite the sudden anxiety gnawing at him. "Can I help you?" The man smiled, but it wasn't a smile that put Jack at ease. There was something calculated in it, something that didn't feel entirely friendly. "I've heard about your work," the man said, looking around the garage with a critical eye. "And I think you've been doing more than just fixing cars around here." Jack raised an eyebrow, confusion clouding his thoughts. "I don't know what you mean." The man's smile widened. "Oh, I think you do. I've been watching your progress on that little project of yours, Emily Harris's custom car." He stepped closer, his tone softening slightly. "I have to say, I'm impressed." Jack's stomach tightened. He had no idea who this man was or how he had even found out about his work with Emily. He had done this for her, for a promise he had made to a little girl who needed to feel empowered, to be part of something beyond her limitations. But now, standing in front of this stranger, Jack was suddenly uncertain. Who was this man? And what did he want with the car? "Look," Jack said, trying to keep his voice calm. "I'm just doing this for Emily. She deserves a chance to feel like everyone else." The man nodded, his expression unreadable. "I understand. But I think we both know that a project like this, it's going to attract attention. And not all of that attention is going to come from people who are as well-intentioned as you." Jack's brow furrowed. "What are you getting at?" The man stepped back, his hands in his pockets. "I work for someone who's very interested in the progress you've made here, and he's willing to offer a deal, a partnership. I think you'll find it beneficial." Jack felt a sense of unease flood over him. He didn't want to get involved in something bigger than he had ever intended. He had never done his work for fame, for recognition, or for profit. This was for Emily, and that was all that mattered. "I'm not interested in partnerships," Jack said firmly. "I'm just trying to give Emily a chance to drive, to feel free." The man's smile didn't waver, but there was a subtle change in his demeanor. "I understand. But just know that people with more resources might be able to offer Emily more than you ever could. You wouldn't want her to miss out on that opportunity, would you? Jack's heart raced as the implications of the man's words settled in. Was this really about Emily's future, or was it something else entirely? He glanced back at the car, which was nearly finished, and in that moment, he knew he had to protect what he had created. It wasn't just a car, it was Emily's dream. And no one was going to take that away from her. The man gave him one last look, as if sizing him up, before turning and walking back to the limo. The door opened, and as he slid into the back seat, he tossed Jack one final comment over his shoulder. Think about it, Mr. Miller. Opportunities like this don't come often. With that, the limo door slammed shut, and the vehicle sped off down the street, leaving Jack standing in the doorway of his garage, his mind racing. What had just happened? And more importantly, what would he do next? The days following the mysterious visit from the man in the limo were filled with a tension Jack had never before experienced. The man's words echoed in his mind constantly, twisting like a knot in his stomach. Opportunities like this don't come often. What did that even mean? And why would anyone want to get involved with a small-town mechanics project for a little girl in a wheelchair? It was clear that this wasn't just about a custom car anymore. There were forces at play, things beyond Jack's understanding, and he had to figure out what they were before it was too late. At the same time, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that he was in over his head. He had been working on this car with a single-minded purpose, to help Emily. Everything he did, every adjustment and modification, was meant to empower her. It wasn't for recognition, fame, or profit. It was to give Emily a piece of freedom she had been denied for years. But now, with that limo pulling up outside his garage and the stranger's cryptic words hanging in the air, Jack wasn't so sure anymore if he could protect this simple dream he was trying to create for her. As he returned to work on the car, the pressure weighed heavily on him. His hands moved mechanically, as if trying to restore some order to the chaos in his mind. He double-checked the wiring, tightened the bolts, and polished the frame, but each task felt more like a distraction than progress. His thoughts kept drifting back to the stranger, the man in the suit who had offered something Jack wasn't sure he could accept. The idea of partnership made his skin crawl. He didn't want anyone else involved. This wasn't about business deals or corporate interests. It was about Emily's happiness, her dignity, and her chance to experience something she thought was beyond her reach. Meanwhile, Emily had started visiting the garage every day after school, sometimes with her mother, sometimes alone. She was so full of energy and excitement, her curiosity never waning. She would ask Jack questions about how the car was coming along, watching him work with the same intensity she had shown the first time she stepped into the garage. Jack could see how much it meant to her, how much she was beginning to believe that this car could truly change her life. One afternoon, as Jack was putting the final touches on the car, Emily wheeled herself up to the workbench, her eyes wide with anticipation. "Is it almost done, Jack? I can't wait to see it," she exclaimed. Jack smiled down at her, his heart swelling with pride. "It's almost there, Emily. Just a few more things to fine-tune, but we're getting close." Emily looked at the car, her fingers tracing the edge of the seat where she would soon be able to sit. "Do you think I'll be able to drive it just like you, Jack? Like the other kids?" Jack knelt down beside her, his face softening. "You'll be driving it better than anyone else. This car was built for you, Emily, to give you everything you've dreamed of." There was a flicker of doubt in Emily's eyes. "But what if I can't do it? What if it doesn't work?" Jack placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You've already shown me that you're more than capable. This car, this life you're going to have, none of it is impossible, Emily. You're stronger than you think." Emily smiled, her usual energy returning. "I'll do it, Jack. I'll drive it. I know I can." And just like that, the weight of the world seemed to lift from Jack's shoulders, if only for a moment. As he stood up, he took one last look at the car. He could see it in his mind. Emily sitting behind the wheel, the wind in her hair, the thrill of independence in her eyes. This wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It was about showing Emily the truth, that her dreams were worth chasing, that she deserved every chance at happiness. But as Jack continued his work, a sense of unease lingered. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen, something he couldn't control. The stranger's visit had unsettled him more than he cared to admit. Jack wasn't naive. He knew how the world worked. People didn't just give away opportunities like the one the man had hinted at without expecting something in return. And that was what Jack feared the most, what would be asked of him, and what it might mean for Emily. As the days passed, Jack found himself spending more time thinking about the offer, wondering what would happen if he turned it down. He had always lived his life on his own terms, doing what he felt was right without ever needing validation from anyone else. But what if turning down the man's offer meant closing doors to something that could change everything for Emily? Could he afford to ignore the possibility that this opportunity might actually help her in ways he couldn't? It wasn't long before the pressure of the decision began to eat at him. He would wake up in the middle of the night, his mind racing with the thought of what he might be giving up. Maybe he was being foolish, holding on to something that wasn't realistic. Maybe he needed to let go of his pride and accept that this wasn't something he could do alone. But then he would remember the look on Emily's face, the excitement, the hope, and he would push the doubts aside, at least for a while. One evening, as Jack was locking up the garage and preparing to go home for the night, a black SUV pulled up outside. This time, Jack didn't hesitate. He had a feeling he knew who it was. The man in the suit, the one from the limo, had come back. He stepped out of the SUV, his face still hidden behind dark sunglasses, but there was something different about him this time. There was an air of finality in his movements, as though he had come to deliver a message rather than an offer. "Mr. Miller," the man called out, his voice low and authoritative. Jack stood at the door of the garage, his arms crossed, trying to appear calm despite the rising tension in his chest. "What do you want now?" Jack asked, his voice steady but edged with suspicion. The man smiled, but it was the kind of smile that made Jack's skin crawl. "I think we both know why I'm here. I've been given clear instructions to make sure you understand the opportunity on the table. You've done well with your project, Jack, but I think we both know you can't do this alone. We can help you take this to the next level. All you need to do is accept our offer." Jack's eyes narrowed. "And if I don't?" The man shrugged slightly, his demeanor cold. "Then we'll have to explore other options. We'd rather not do that, Mr. Miller. We'd much prefer to work with you. But this car, this project, it's bigger than just you now. And it's time you realize that." Jack's heart raced as the weight of the situation hit him. This was no longer just about a car. It wasn't even just about Emily. It was about control, about something much larger than he could have ever anticipated. Jack opened his mouth to speak, but before he could say a word, the sound of an engine roaring to life interrupted him. Looking toward the driveway, he saw the unmistakable silhouette of a sleek, black limo pulling up once again, this time even more menacing than before. And in that moment, Jack realized that no matter what he chose, everything was about to change. Jack stood frozen as the limo came to a slow stop in front of his garage, the engine humming like a dark omen. His heart beat wildly, the tension rising in his chest. He didn't know what this man was capable of, but everything inside him screamed that he needed to be careful. The man in the suit had made his position clear. Jack was no longer in control of his own fate. The choice wasn't simply whether to accept the offer. It was whether or not he could protect the dream he had built for Emily. As the limo doors swung open, Jack's stomach churned. Out stepped a figure in a sharp black suit, a man who carried himself with a silent authority. It was clear that this wasn't just a businessman. This was someone who knew how to get what he wanted, no matter the cost. The stranger's dark sunglasses only added to the air of mystery surrounding him. "Mr. Miller," the man's voice was smooth, almost too smooth. "I trust you've been considering our proposal." Jack swallowed hard, taking a step forward. "I'm not interested in your offer," he said, trying to steady his voice. "I don't want to get involved in whatever you're selling. This car, what I'm doing for Emily, it's personal. It's not for profit, not for anything but giving her the chance she deserves." The man smiled faintly, his eyes hidden behind the dark lenses. "You misunderstand, Jack. This isn't about money. It's about influence, about power. What you've created here, this car, it's more than just a project. It's a symbol that could be used for something much larger than you can comprehend. We can help you make it bigger, better, more impactful. We can make Emily's dream a reality in ways you never imagined." Jack felt a chill crawl down his spine. "I didn't build this for a bigger audience or to become a pawn in some scheme. I built it for Emily. She's the only one I'm doing this for." The man's smile faltered, and for a brief moment, Jack thought he saw a flicker of something darker in his eyes. "I understand your loyalty to her, Jack, but let me be clear. This isn't just about you anymore. This car, this project, it's already caught the attention of people who can take it to places you can't even begin to imagine. If you want to protect Emily's future, you'll need to accept our help." Jack's mind raced. This was no longer just a mechanic fixing up a car. It was a battle for control over something far more important than he had ever realized. He thought of Emily, the joy and excitement she had shown each time she visited the garage, the hope in her eyes. He couldn't let her become another pawn in someone else's game. He couldn't let her dreams be hijacked by people who saw her only as a project or an opportunity. "I'm not interested in your power games," Jack said, his voice firmer now. "I've spent my whole life working on cars because I believe in something simple: helping people. That's all I want to do. And if I have to turn you down to keep it that way, then that's what I'll do." The man's expression shifted, his demeanor cooling. "I had hoped you'd see reason, Jack, but I'm afraid you're making a mistake." He stepped forward, his hand slipping into his suit pocket. "Let's see how long you can keep holding on to that idea of independence." Jack didn't move, his fists clenched at his sides. The man's words were a threat, and they were meant to shake him. But Jack had been in tough situations before. He had dealt with people who tried to push him around, to force him into corners. But he wasn't about to let that happen here. Not with Emily's future at stake. Just as the tension between them reached its peak, there was a sudden noise, something unmistakable. The sound of a car engine, the rumble of an approaching vehicle. Both Jack and the man turned toward the sound, their attention momentarily diverted. The unmistakable roar of a powerful engine grew louder, cutting through the tension in the air. A car, a fast one, was pulling up the driveway. Jack's heart skipped a beat. Could it be? He recognized that sound. It was a car he had worked on once before. The rumble of the engine was unmistakable, and when the car came into view, Jack's breath caught in his throat. It wasn't just any car. It was the very vehicle he had restored for the man in the limo. The one he had worked on months ago, a high-performance model that had been the subject of much debate in the local community. Why would the man be driving this car now? As the car came to a halt in front of the garage, the limo driver stepped out, followed by the man in the suit. He had a look of satisfaction on his face, his plan seeming to unfold just the way he had intended. Jack's mind raced. This was no coincidence. The man had orchestrated everything. He had manipulated events to push Jack into a corner where he had no choice but to accept his offer. The man in the suit looked over at Jack, his lips curling into a smile that sent a shiver down his spine. "You see, Jack," he said, his tone dripping with satisfaction, "this car wasn't just a favor. It was an investment." Jack felt his stomach drop. This wasn't about helping Emily. It never had been. It was about something far more sinister. This man had used Emily's story, her hopes, as a way to gain leverage. The man stepped forward, his hand extending toward Jack. "I suggest you reconsider. If you accept our offer, things will go much smoother for everyone involved. You won't have to worry about your future or Emily's. All of this can be yours if you play your cards right." Jack stared at the outstretched hand, feeling the weight of the decision before him. Everything in his body screamed for him to turn away, to refuse, to protect Emily's dream at all costs. But the pressure was mounting, and he knew that if he didn't find a way to take control back, everything he had worked for could slip away. He took a deep breath, fighting to keep his composure. "I won't be part of your game," he said, his voice steady but resolute. "I won't let you use Emily, or this car, for whatever you think you can gain." The man's smile faded, and his eyes hardened. "You'll regret this, Jack, but I'm sure you'll come to your senses." As the man turned to leave, the limo driver moved back to the black vehicle, the sound of its engine purring in the distance. The world around Jack felt impossibly heavy, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. But he couldn't give in. Not now. As the man disappeared into the distance, Jack stood there, alone in front of the garage, his heart racing. The night was quiet, the only sound the hum of the wind against the metal of the garage. But inside Jack, a storm was brewing. He had no idea what would happen next, but one thing was certain: this fight wasn't over. The real challenge had only just begun. Jack sat in the quiet of his garage long after the limo had disappeared, his mind spinning with 100 different thoughts. The conversation with the man in the suit had left him shaken, but more than that, it had made him realize just how deep he was now in something he couldn't easily escape. The simple, humble act of trying to give Emily her freedom, her chance to drive, had escalated into a battle of wills, power, and influence. The project that had once seemed like a simple labor of love had now become a chess game, with forces far beyond his control maneuvering in the background. He wiped his greasy hands on a rag, though he barely noticed it. His mind wasn't on the car in front of him, or the mechanics of the project anymore. It was on Emily. What would happen to her dream if he couldn't protect it? What would she think of him when she found out everything that had happened? She trusted him, and he had promised her that nothing would take away her independence. How could he look her in the eyes if he gave in to the pressure, if he allowed this man, and whatever organization he represented, to control her future? The problem was, Jack wasn't sure he had the strength to fight what was coming. The man had been clear. Emily's dream could be realized in ways Jack couldn't even begin to comprehend, but at what cost? And if Jack refused to cooperate, would they find another way to take the car from him? Would they go after Emily's parents, or even Emily herself? The questions gnawed at his insides like a disease he couldn't shake. He leaned back against the workbench, staring at the half-finished car. The frame was nearly complete, and the custom-made chair was perfectly fitted for Emily's small, determined frame. Jack had poured his heart into this, working countless late nights and weekends, just to make it perfect for her. But now it felt like the weight of the entire world was resting on his shoulders, pressing him down, suffocating him. There was a knock at the door, sharp and sudden, and it sent a jolt of anxiety through his chest. Who could it be at this hour? His first thought was the man in the suit, back to make good on his threats, but when he opened the door, he was met with an unexpected face. It was Lucy, Emily's mother, standing on the other side, her expression tense, but there was a deep concern in her eyes. Jack hadn't expected her to visit. She had always been supportive, but had never gotten involved too deeply in the project. Emily's dreams had been enough of a reason for her to trust Jack, but now something was different. "Jack, we need to talk," Lucy said, her voice strained. Jack stepped aside to let her in. "What's going on, Lucy?" She glanced at the car in the garage, her eyes softening for a moment before the urgency in her voice returned. "I didn't want to worry you, but we've been getting some strange calls. People asking about the car, asking about Emily." Jack's stomach churned. He knew exactly who those people were. The man in the suit had begun his work, even without Jack's cooperation. He hadn't wasted any time in spreading the word about the project, and now it was becoming a matter of public interest. "Who's been calling?" Jack asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "They're asking about the car, about the plans for it," Lucy continued, her voice faltering. "Some of them are saying they can help. They've even offered money, Jack. Lots of money. But I can tell they don't care about Emily. It's like they just want to take control of everything." Jack clenched his jaw. This was worse than he thought. The man in the suit hadn't just come after him. He had started to work his way through Emily's family as well, trying to undermine the very foundation of what they had built. Jack couldn't allow that to happen. He couldn't let them manipulate Lucy and Bill the way they were trying to manipulate him. "Did you tell them to stop calling?" Jack asked, his voice sharp. "I tried. I told them that Emily doesn't want anything to do with them, that she's not a project, not something to profit from. But they won't take no for an answer, Jack. They're persistent, and they have resources we don't. I'm scared of what will happen if they don't back off." Jack took a deep breath, trying to steady his racing thoughts. His instincts screamed at him to protect Emily, to shelter her from all of this. But he knew that if he didn't do something fast, this was only going to get worse. He couldn't let them take what he had built for her. He wouldn't allow it. "I'm not going to let them take her dream," Jack said, the conviction in his voice growing stronger. "I don't care what they do, or how many people they send after us. This is for Emily, and I'm going to fight for her no matter what." Lucy looked at him, her eyes filled with gratitude but also fear. "What are you going to do?" Jack turned toward the car, his mind whirring with possibilities. He had to think, and think fast. He knew he couldn't take on these people alone, but he wasn't sure who to trust. The man in the suit had made it clear that Jack was outmatched, but that didn't mean he was going to give up. If he had to face them head-on, then so be it. He turned back to Lucy. "I need you to keep Emily safe. Keep her away from anyone who's asking about the car. Don't let them get close to her, no matter what they offer." Lucy nodded, her face pale but resolute. "I'll do whatever it takes, Jack. We can't let them take advantage of her." Jack's eyes locked with hers. "I'm going to finish the car, and when it's done, I'll get Emily behind the wheel. But we need to be ready. Whatever happens next, we need to stay one step ahead of them." The night stretched on, but Jack couldn't rest. He knew he was racing against time, that the man in the suit and his mysterious organization weren't going to give up easily. But Jack had always been good at working with his hands, finding solutions when things seemed impossible. This time, though, the stakes were higher. It wasn't just about fixing a car. It was about protecting a future. As Jack got back to work on the car, his resolve solidified. He would see this through, no matter the cost. He would protect Emily's dream, even if it meant going up against the forces that wanted to control it. He wasn't alone in this fight. Emily was depending on him, and he wouldn't let her down. The days following Jack's decision were a blur of tension and determination. The constant pressure of the man's threats loomed over him, but it also ignited a fire within Jack, a fire that burned with the need to protect not just the car he had worked so hard on, but the dream he had promised Emily. The garage, once a place of simple, everyday tasks, now felt like a battleground. Every click of a wrench, every turn of the screwdriver, was no longer just about mechanics. It was about something far bigger, something Jack hadn't fully understood until now. This was a fight for freedom. The freedom to dream, to build, and to live on one's own terms. As the final touches were made on the mini-car, Jack couldn't help but reflect on how far he had come. It wasn't just about the car anymore. It was about the fight for Emily's future. Every day, more people tried to reach him, some with subtle approaches, others with outright offers of cash, or threats that hinted at the far-reaching consequences of refusing their deal. But Jack had made his choice. He wasn't going to let Emily's independence be bargained away. Not for any amount of money, not for any amount of power. It was on the morning of the final day, the day Jack planned to surprise Emily with the finished car, that the man in the suit showed up once again. Jack had expected it. He had braced himself for this moment, but the encounter still hit him like a punch to the gut. The Limo rolled up, smooth and imposing, and outstepped the familiar figure, his cold, calculating eyes hidden behind the ever-present sunglasses. This time, however, there was no pretense of civility. The man was here for one reason: to force Jack's hand. "I gave you time, Jack," the man said, his voice smooth and menacing. "I was hoping you would come to your senses, but now I'm afraid we're out of options. The car, the girl, it all belongs to us now. You're not in control anymore." Jack stood in front of the garage, his body tense but his heart unwavering. "I don't know what you're after," he said, his voice steady, "but it's not happening. I'm not handing over the car. It's for Emily, and I won't let you take it from her." The man chuckled, but there was no humor in it. "You really don't understand, do you? It's not just about the car. It's about everything that comes with it. Emily's story, the attention it's getting. All of this is bigger than you. It's a project now, Jack, and I'm not letting you stand in the way of that." "I don't care about your project," Jack shot back, his eyes burning with resolve. "I care about her. Emily. She's the only thing that matters." The man's smile faded, replaced by a coldness that made Jack's skin crawl. "You're making this harder than it needs to be. This could all go smoothly, Jack. You could be a part of something much bigger than you ever imagined. Think about the opportunities. Think about the money. Think about the influence. You could retire, live comfortably, never have to worry about another thing in your life. All you have to do is step aside." Jack shook his head, disbelief flashing across his face. "No, you don't get it. This isn't about money. This isn't about influence. This is about Emily's freedom, her right to live her life the way she wants. You think you can buy that with cash and power, but you can't. Not this time." The man's expression hardened, the mask of calm cracking for a brief moment. "You've made a big mistake, Jack. A huge mistake. But I'm not giving up. Not yet." With that, he turned and walked toward the limo. Jack watched him go, his heart still pounding in his chest. The words hung in the air like a heavy cloud, but he wasn't going to let them break him. He knew what he had to do. It wasn't just about the car anymore. It was about taking a stand. Jack wasn't going to let fear or money dictate Emily's future, not when he had the power to change things for the better. He watched the limo pull away, the sound of its engine fading into the distance, and made a vow to himself that he would see this through to the end. That afternoon, when Emily and her parents arrived at the garage, the look of joy on Emily's face was enough to fill Jack's heart with pride. There, parked in front of the garage, was the finished car, a miniature version of a sleek, real car, complete with custom features that would allow Emily to drive it despite her paralysis. The look of wonder in her eyes was everything Jack had hoped for. This wasn't just a car. This was Emily's chance at freedom. "Jack," Emily's voice trembled as she stood in front of the car. "Is this for me?" Jack smiled, his eyes softening as he nodded. "It's all yours, Emily. I built it just for you." Her face lit up, and she could barely contain her excitement. She rushed toward the car, her mother standing behind her with tears in her eyes. Jack's heart swelled with emotion. He had done it. Against all odds, he had built something that would change Emily's life. He had fought for her freedom. And in that moment, he knew he had won. Not against the man in the suit, not against anyone who had tried to undermine them. He had won because he had stayed true to what mattered. As Emily carefully took her place behind the wheel, with Jack's help, the reality of the moment hit him. This wasn't just about a car or a project. It was about a young girl who had fought for the right to be independent, to experience the world in a way that had always been denied to her. This car wasn't just a vehicle. It was a symbol of everything Emily had overcome. It was a testament to the power of belief, of persistence, and of the people who cared enough to make a difference. As the engine roared to life, Jack watched as Emily grinned from ear to ear, her face filled with joy, her hands gripping the wheel. For the first time in her life, she was in control. And that, Jack knew, was worth more than anything the man in the suit could ever offer. The man would never understand the importance of this moment, but Jack did, and that was all that mattered. Jack stepped back, watching as Emily drove the car around the yard, her laughter echoing in the distance. This was the moment that would define everything. This was where the dream became a reality. Jack didn't need anyone's approval or validation. He had done the right thing. And in that, he found his peace. For Emily, the future was now hers to shape, and Jack had given her the tools to do it.